This week's, no, that's not it. That's not the word. All right. This week on Carlie's Couch, we talk about asking for help, when you should, why you should, and how to get better at it in your life. Dun, 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 dun.
Happy Monday to everybody. Welcome to Carlie's Couch. Mental health edition, apparently.
Yeah, it is Mental Health Month. We
It
international today, baby.
Yeah, I'm in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Turned up a little bit, but here we are. Still gonna make it work. Still gonna
Look,
get the
still getting it
episode
done.
popping. Right.
Still getting it done. I went
Right.
to a business conference yesterday, and there were like two people there who have been on the podcast, Kareem Webb and Trey Brown. And
Oh, you saw Kareem.
yeah,
Yay.
I was in passing though because they were running a little bit late, and your girl had other things to do. So
Oh, they were a
I
part
was,
of the program.
yep.
Oh, cool.
Trey was there talking about funding for startups, and he's working with part of a community fund to help not only fund startups but offer business coaching to them. That seems pretty cool. And then Kareem was on a panel, or was supposed to be on a panel.
Oh, nice. And you were there as a participant.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Yeah, but that's cool to go to more of those kind of gatherings around like business, and it's just so good to listen to other people who have done things right. I remember back in my DC days, I went to a lot more of those types of things. I feel like I don't see as many in LA, or I don't know, maybe I haven't looked for them as much, but um in general, you'd be like, okay, I know some of this stuff, but then there was always like one or two people who would say something that's like, oh, like, let me try that. And then even if you get a little bit of something from it, it's usually worth it. So I hope you got something out of it yesterday, and that it was a good conference.
Yeah, it was really dope. It was by, I guess, Wells Fargo funded it for Black and Brown entrepreneurs. And so I got to meet people. I consider it a win if like I'm able to meet people and I learned
Hmm.
something. And so got to see some familiar faces, but got to meet some folks and did learn some things, a lot about funding. I'm trying to get back out and going to more conferences. I also used to go to a lot more,
Hmm.
but obviously COVID kind of killed a bunch of that. And so we're trying to figure out like what it looks like to rebuild. But so if you have a business, if you want a side business, if you're looking to grow yours, I would say like look for any type of conferences in the area. Go meet some people, learn some things. There's tons of money out there to help you build your businesses in the form of loans, but also in the form of grants, and even for businesses that aren't nonprofits.
Yeah, and now there's usually a lot of people who are also like live streaming it, or you can participate virtually. So it's not that much excuse. And then there's so many like free things that do like little virtual seminars, etc. Even if you can't make the investment to go to some of these like ticketed type conferences.
Because this one was free 99.
Yeah, that's good.
Had a little lunch, all that, but it was cool because I feel like mental health hasn't always been in the forefront of discussion when you're thinking about entrepreneurship and business.
Mm-hmm.
And there were so many people there talking about it in their own businesses, like me. And there's another person who does like creative wellness for creatives. And so, like,
Mm-hmm.
specific things for artists and photographers. And like, it's cool. And so, I think that today's like conversation is very fitting because so many people there were talking about burnout, about not being able to take care of yourself and feeling like you're pouring more out and putting your all into
Mm-hmm.
something, but then how do you really like take care of yourself?
Yeah, to that point, I do feel like people feel more comfortable speaking about those things because it wasn't really a part of the conversation. But I think now in general, we are starting to see more and more of it, which is good because, it's good to keep reminding people that we are human beings, that we do only have, but so much energy and depth to like really get all of these things done. And it can be a lot. So I think today's episode is very fitting to talk about, knowing when to ask for help and what that looks like for you, or what that can look like.
Yeah, and it's something I thought was interesting because I saw a friend of ours post on social media and just asked like, when do you ask for help? Like, for you
That
specifically, they
was
were
just
like,
a question. Oh, they were
uh-huh.
asking you.
Yeah, they were asking it on their story,
Oh.
and we're like, and put a little question box up. And I was like, oh, I think that'd be a great topic for an episode because
Hmm.
even a lot of the responses that they were posting, people were like, I don't know. Usually I'm too late. Like, I don't ever ask for help and different things. And I'm like, what does it look like actually to ask for help? Like, how do you know when it's time to, reach out to somebody else or when you can continue to push through? And maybe how do you set up your life in a way where you don't even, it never comes to that point, where you already have the support you need when you're in those systems, or like when you're in that situation.
Hmm. Well, which question should we start with?
Um, I think we should talk about like, how do you know when it's time to ask for help?
Mm,
Like, do you ask for help? Like when you think about your life, like when's the last time you asked for help?
well, so are we specifically talking about when you're feeling like mentally you're kind of going through it? Are we talking about like, oh, I need help with a thing, a task, or something like that? We're specifically kind of speaking to, hey, I'm kind of feeling down. Is that right?
Hmm. Yeah, I
Okay.
would say like
So
I'd say we could focus it on mental health and then kind of talk about the other stuff later.
yeah, because I mean those are totally different, right? Because when it comes to a more on the side of like a mental health, hey, like I feel like I need to talk to somebody, that is um that's kind of more far and few between for me personally, but that's also because I have a pretty good toolkit, which doesn't um, necessarily include like having to reach out like that. And
Hmm.
because I think one of the biggest questions that I've always had and that I see other people have is like, okay, if you are feeling some kind of way or if you're just like, ugh, I'm just kind of down, like, what does asking for help even mean? Like, what do you need in that moment? And sometimes you don't really know what you need, or like, what exactly are you asking for? So, quite frankly, it doesn't really feel as much as like an asking for help as it does when I'm answering this. I'm thinking about like, at what point do I actually say like, hey, I'm feeling kind of down, like, and I just let me just
Hmm.
reach out or like talk to you or say something. I think that's a little bit different. And I guess it could still be asking for help, but like usually I just say how I'm feeling. So I'm like, man, I'm feeling really like drained right now. Like I really you know, like this is just how I'm feeling. And then usually kind of just maybe stating that, talking for a minute might be helpful. Um, but yeah, that's what it looks like for me, but it's not. I don't know. I have to be like really, really like feeling, man, I really feel deep in a hole to like say that to somebody else. Like I feel like it might be necessary for somebody else to know what's going on with me.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's a, a good tipping point. Like when you feel kind of like you're going into a hole. I was thinking about it, and I think that in my toolkit, like I've learned to start asking before I end up in a hole. Like I can tell kind of when my emotions are starting to take a turn. So if I'm having like a bad day or a bad week or going through things, I usually use a lot of things in my toolkit first before I, try to reach out because I'm like, okay, depending on how severe, whatever it might be, sadness or depression or grief, which is something that I've been, going through lately. I might go work out, I might go for a run, I might listen to a meditation or some Abraham Hicks videos or something to like make me feel like better. And then if it's not, then I might reach out to someone. And I think about like, the last time I was just having a really rough day, like grief was really heavy on me. And I just like
Hmm.
sent a couple text messages to people like, hey, I'm struggling today. Like, I'm really
Hmm.
struggling. And um, then whenever I saw my partner, I was like, hey, I'm, having a rough day. Like, can I have a hug? Like, I need some regulation right now. Can we co-regulate? Um, so that's kind of mine. I don't know if I answer, but I think I ask before I fall into the hole because then it just feels too far gone. So it's like, when is it too late to ask too, to where you feel like it's more of an uphill battle to get back regulated?
I mean, when you need help is when you need help. So I think for everybody, there's different spaces. So at that point, at the point that you need to ask somebody, then that's the point you need to ask somebody. I can't ask when I feel like it's getting back because I don't even really know what that means. I don't know, like when it feels like it's just a little too much for me, or sometimes like how you said, we'll have our toolbox, so maybe you can write, or you can just kind of like let me just veg out for a minute, read, do whatever, right? Take a shower, or take a bath, or do some relaxing stuff. There's so much that we can do, but I think that
Mhm.
there's some times when it feels like that's not going to help. That stuff is not really going to do it right now, and so I think that's at the point where I know, like, well, let me just I need somebody else to reach out to. One thing in my last therapy session, I had therapy this week with my therapist. One thing that she brought up was that she said she's doing research right now and doing like some writing, academic like writing on what does self care really mean, in that self-care actually might more so be about community involvement than what a person is doing for themselves. And that self-care oftentimes may look like you spending time with your friends or being out or doing things, because when you think about it too, it's like sometimes in those moments that you're not thinking about your own stuff, because like self-care, in air quotes, and like sitting by yourself and lighting a candle and meditating, whatever, you're still sitting with your own thoughts.
Hmm.
So I think that's something that she was talking about and looking at, to where, I think about when I need help or if I'm asking for help, it's typically a call for connection or a call to, um, just be with somebody else, or have you hear me or whatever, right? They're not really solving anything, but like I think it is like a call to be in community a little bit more. And so that oftentimes that we don't think about that, and spending time with people, or even asking somebody else how they are, whatever might make you feel better in the moment. But I think all of those things are very relevant.
I think so too. And I think I'm so glad that you mentioned that because community care is so important. And to your point, like I think that that is such an extension of self-care, but in our society, and you talked about it before, like how individualistic like the US is and Western societies are, like
Hmm.
that makes it harder to ask for help because it's set up in a way where like, you can do it by yourself and you can do all these things and we're more isolated and not necessarily trained. And so I think that that's one of the things that actually keeps people from asking for help. But I like the thought of like whenever you feel like what you typically do to regulate yourself is not enough is a good time to ask for help, or to reach out to somebody. And then maybe when you need connection or need, a listening ear. I was listening to Simon Sinek, who wrote what is it? His book about why or whatever. But he was saying that he has this thing with his friends that they've set up in their community, like a community norm, where nobody cries alone. And he was
Hmm.
like, because like he's like, nobody should cry alone. So he's like, we have this thing that you can call and you just let someone cry on the phone with you. And you'd be like, you good? Okay, cool. And you just let them go about their day. But it's
Hmm.
important. He was like, whenever you get to that point of emotional release, to have someone just hold that space and feel supported, even if they're not saying anything.
Have you ever called a crisis hotline or 988 or any of those things where you just talk to somebody you don't know?
I actually never have. Have you?
Um, no. And my question was going to be, do you feel like there's a difference in just reaching out for help, like in general slash anonymously, as opposed to reaching out to a friend?
I do. I do. I think that some other things that keep people from asking for help are like fear of judgment or fear of rejection or um, fear of like people letting you down. And so in that moment, you might, or like, I think a lot of it is probably judgment or rejection. You might not want to share that you're so sad because someone might have before been like, but you have everything and you're this and you're that. And it just wasn't very helpful. So that might keep you from like reaching out to friends. Whereas if you have like a third party, like a therapist, someone who you kind of know and have familiarity, or something like a hotline, you could actually feel like you could be more honest because there's no consequences after or no worry about like how they're going to think about you and that,
Mm,
what that will mean like in y'all's relationship. So it kind of gives you like it could be a possible safer or brave space if you don't have those set up in your life.
yeah, and I would say for anybody, right, I'd rather them call a number or reach out to one of these resources, if that feels easier. But I think maybe that's a bigger thing to talk about too, is like, well, why is it so difficult to ask for help in general? And it's because I think of partly what you said as far as perceptions, and you want to feel like you have it together, or you don't want to be judged, or you think this or that. But it's just, it's so interesting to me, like, maybe even as we get older we see this more, but so many people have so many things that they're dealing with. And I think all the time on the news, via Twitter, whatever, right, we see people who um, are, whether they take their lives or they talk about things they're going through, and it just always seems like it's some big revelation, like, wow, oh my gosh, they're really going through stuff too. And it's like everybody is, and yet because nobody talks about it as much, then that's what kind of leads to some of that stigma. But it's very rarely. I can't think of any examples right now. It's not fair to say it doesn't happen at all, but I think that it's very rare that somebody would be vulnerable about something, or ask for help or talk about how they're feeling and be met with criticism, or like, straightforward, like, or you're weak or whatever. Especially nowadays, where it is something that I think people are starting to respect the conversation at least a little bit more. Um, so I would challenge people, and I guess everybody listening, to reach out for help a little bit more, and that may look like doing it at a less deep level than talking about like even
Hmm.
just mental health, right? It may be um, if you just tell somebody like, "Man, I feel kind of overwhelmed right now." Like it can be something that's you can deal with, but just like practice like telling somebody or letting somebody know, because also that's sometimes not really fair when the people around you have no idea what's going on. And I don't think that's entirely on people to like always have to reach out to you and ask you, how you're doing. And so I would say to practice that on a lower level this week for sure.
Yeah, that's one of the best ways to actually get better is to start small and like build a habit. And so maybe not even something emotional if you're not ready for that, but start asking for things in general, like asking for help. Like, oh, can you help me come over and move my couch and do this? Or I'm leaving for the
Mhm.
weekend. Can you like feed my cat or something? Just like small.
That's a little
And
different because
well,
I
well, it
don't know
depends
if
on
I
the
feel like
level
they
of
got
your
to do all
friend.
that.
Well, but you have to build up that strength of possibly getting rejected. Like that's a big thing of why people don't ask for things, and it's all connected. And so I'm not saying meet somebody random on the street and be like, come to my crib and feed my cat. But if you know somebody or they live in your apartment complex or they're like across the
Mhm.
street or something, like, hey, can you do this? But you also have to like be okay with them rejecting you or saying no and doing that. And to your point, what you were saying earlier, I was like reading about research, and there's overwhelming research that people tend to overestimate others or underestimate others' willingness to help and
Mhm.
overestimate how inconvenienced people will be if we ask for something. So we're always
Mhm.
stopping ourselves by not asking for things that could be emotional, could be otherwise, because we think that people won't do it. And so I love the idea of like starting small and asking, in whatever capacity you feel comfortable, but like trying to build that momentum with your friends. But then to your point, like anytime we ask for help and allow people to help us or support us or be there, we're allowing them to bless us too. And so sometimes you're like stopping people from like showing up for you in ways that they could because you think they might not do it or that they might be too inconvenienced.
Yeah, and bigger than that, I mean, you're just making things more difficult for yourself. Everything doesn't have to be so difficult. And so, to your point, if we talk ourselves out of being helped or things being easier, I the other day sent a text. I felt in my brain like, oh, this is a long shot, but like I wanted it so bad. I was like, well, I don't care. And I just texted it like, hey, will you go get some ramen and bring it by my house? And they were like, of course. Like, order it, I'll go pick it up and bring it. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, and then I almost was about to be like, oh no, no, like, like then kind of backtrack, like, oh, that's sweet, but you don't really have to. And I was like, well, shoot, like, okay, I got it. Let me order it and go pick it up and bring it over. And that made me realize that it's not something to necessarily abuse, but like if when you really want something or if you need something, especially if you're that type of person, right, where nobody wants to feel like you're coming across like entitled, like you're always being like, "Well, I need $30 for my nails today. I need $10 for my bills tomorrow. I need
Hmm.
come over and do this, come over and do that." Like nobody, that's gonna get old real quick. But if you're really like asking when you need something, then I think that people can respect that as well. And like it just makes life easier.
Yeah, and it like just like we feel good about being able to help people and show up for them, like it allows other people that too. And like that's a cool thing too. It's like a giving and receiving, and you create this circle of reciprocity in all your relationships where
Mhm.
you're not always the giver, which a lot of times in people pleasing and relationships and things like we can feel like we're doing too much, but you actually literally never ask for help. You literally never give
Mhm.
people opportunities to support you, but then you feel like, man, nobody ain't got my back. They not doing this for me. You
Yeah,
also never
that's the
ask,
worst
bro.
too.
You
Yeah.
never ask, dog.
Or you act like you have it all together all the time. So it's like, why would I ask you?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, that's so important. I'm learning to do that too. And it is cool to see, yeah, and I hate entitlement, but it is cool to see, what people want to do and how they want to show up for you. Some more research on ways to get better at asking for things, similar to having smart goals, is to have smart requests. So
Mhm.
specific, meaningful, action oriented, realistic, and time bound. So like before you reach out, if you're in, a moment, it can be helpful to think about like exactly what you need. So be very specific about how someone can show up for you. why you need it, because that's helpful for people to understand. Because you might ask for something and they think you want it for X, but you really need it for Y. And if they knew, the reason why you wanted it, they might be more inclined to do it. Um, what resources like information or emotional support would help you make progress. So action oriented. What this person might be able to assist with. So being realistic about what they could maybe show up for, and then like when you need something by. So similar to goals,
Mhm.
like kind of think about that too. Not saying you have to write a dissertation when you're asking things, but when you present it in a way with more information and help people understand the why, it might help you actually get your requests more often.
Mhm. So, to me, that sounds like there may be times if like a person is just feeling kind of down, and like we said kind of earlier, maybe you can realize to yourself that you just need like connection, but to reach out to somebody, maybe specifically to say, like, hey, can I come over and like watch something with you? I just really, I'm feeling kind of lonely right now. I don't really want to be by myself, or I'm going through XYZ. Could do it as opposed to just saying like, oh, hey, can I come through? And then they just feel like no, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like you're just trying to infringe upon them or whatever. But like if you kind of are able to have the strength and the vulnerability to let them know what's going on, then it's a little bit different. Or even with the like, hey, can I get a hug? But then it's a little different when you can also say like, I'm kind of, grief is hitting me heavy today. Like so those things kind of take it to the next level. So I think that that is good to be able to express why, what's kind of going on with you so that they also, because people do go through their own things too, right? Like, sometimes it could be an inconvenience based off what you're asking them. Um, but when they can do it and they know it's, around, you feeling some kind of way or going through something, I think that's a little bit different.
Yeah, and that requires like one a level of self-awareness. So you actually have to like sit with and figure out what you need and what's going
Hmm.
on, which is huge. But then also being very vulnerable, which a lot of times we don't
Hmm.
want to do because we are scared of rejection or judgment and
Hmm.
all that. And so, it's really unmasking ourselves and letting people see us, for who and where we are. And then this also presents you an opportunity to be curious about rejection. So, for
Hmm.
example, like maybe you asked for something and somebody said no, and maybe it's because they didn't have enough time to like get the stuff together to help you. Maybe they already have plans on the specific day. Like if I hit up Lexi and was like, hey, can I come over? I'm feeling kind of lonely today. Like actually, I'm like doing some work on this project down here. I can't do it maybe tomorrow or maybe this weekend or something like that. And so, thinking about how you can give people more time and reflect on how you're asking and what you're asking for, and that can help you improve your asks like when it comes to
Hmm.
people, like giving them more time, like more notice.
Yeah, but I think that's also why it's important to have, multiple things in your toolkit, whether it is maybe you do reach out to a couple of friends first, but if you can't get to somebody, then feeling okay calling like 988 or an anonymous type
Mhm.
line or something just to like talk it out if it's at that point. Because yeah, sometimes also we don't ask for things as directly or like show the urgency if we do have urgency, because we're still kind of trying to think about their time and be considerate. We may kind
Mhm.
of seem like it's not that deep, and I think we, like the words we put into sentences, we're kind of softening it up type thing. When you're texting or like emailing somebody, that makes it kind of feel like okay, this is not that important. And so I think it is worth recognizing like how you are asking and also being very straightforward or not like making sure you're not trying to like cloud up the words and stuff like that so people do know. But if they
Mhm.
can't, then like, go to your next kind of options.
Yeah, that's super important. And we've done an episode on needs before. It was 164. So if you are in a space it's like where I do feel like I need help, but I don't necessarily know what I need, maybe listen to that and think through process for yourself like what you need. I
Mhm.
actually was talking to one of my friends a couple weeks ago, and he mentioned this really cool idea of something called an emotional go bag, like a hoe bag. It's like if you spend it overnight, you got like a
Mhm.
little to go bag. And so just adding to your toolkit, something you can do to be proactive, like not in the middle of crisis, obviously, but before, whenever you're feeling better or more like yourself, is to think about the people in your life like who you do trust to be, there for you, who you can be vulnerable with, who you can be open. And then think about like the ways that they support you that make you feel good. So like one of
Mhm.
your friends might be really good at like listening and holding space and giving advice. One might be really good at just cooking for you and y'all just chill and watch TV shows. One might be good for fun and getting your mind off things
Mhm.
and distraction. And so think about those people and then talk to them, like have conversations so that they know like in that moment of crisis, like I'm gonna call you, to hang out and maybe you can cook. I'll bring over groceries, you can cook, and that might help me whenever I'm feeling really lonely or sad. Or, if I text you like emergency or whatever, if you could just hold space, like Simon Sinek and his friends, like I'm crying, like can one of y'all hold space right now? And so setting it, thinking about like all those things, and this might help you think about what you need, like thinking about all of those things that help you feel more grounded, supported, seen, loved. And then when you are, falling into those moments of crisis, being able to reach out to those people that you've already talked to about it. Like they already know, like, if I'm struggling, like this is really helpful for me. Can you show up for me like this? Like, yeah, this is what I can. Or no, I can't do that, but I can do this. Like
Mhm.
maybe I can't cook all the time, but I'll send you Uber Eats or whatever, and then we can sit on the phone. And so, like, I think that that's one way to be helpful so you don't have to do as much legwork, like in the moment, whenever you're feeling,
Yeah, I think that
yeah.
connects back to what something you said at the very beginning too, when you were talking about what are also ways to where you don't really need to ask for help or it doesn't get you like that deep of a time. And so just now it sounds like you're kind of saying too, like have people who actually know what's going on as things are going on. So that might be like um, like they know that you have lost a loved one or like, there's different things along the way where they've kind of seen the different pieces so that, they know that there's something going on or maybe something with work. It might be like, you've talked to somebody and told them like you're having difficulty or, um, maybe business is not booming or whatever it might be. And so they like are kind of knowing what's going on. But also, I think even sometimes when you do that, though, it's still not necessarily like when you really feel like heavily down or something going on, it doesn't necessarily, it's not like linear per se.
Mhm.
Um, but I think also one thing about talking along the way to different people though is that you do learn like who's the person when it's real deep, like who is the person that makes sense to talk to because it doesn't make sense to talk to everybody. So, kind of based off of like how empathetic or how much they want to be there in those kind of smaller or maybe more surface kind of times can help you to understand like who might really have the space for you for real. And actually not even the space really because you still got to ask about that but like
For sure.
who will like really be like oh man like really care, you know what I mean, at the time because everybody won't necessarily do that.
No, they won't, and that's a great point. Like always considering that, life is lifing and people always have their own things. So always checking in before like emotionally dumping on folks or expecting them to hold space for you. And doing that, it is definitely a give and take of emotion and space, like in a reciprocity of energy.
Yeah,
Um,
because sometimes it
and
doesn't feel fair in those points too. I can't remember exactly what it was. Somebody did that to me recently where they somebody was texting me all this stuff and like in my head I was like, bro, I was already having like, a crazy day myself. So it was just like I hear you, but like I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it, but it's just like you don't even know how I'm doing right now. So like this ain't
mhm.
really the time like to be here and all that. And just can't really focus on that. So I don't know if you necessarily have to be like, hey, how are you first necessarily, but like you've talked about in older episodes where you can ask somebody like, hey, do you have space to hold for me right now?
Yep.
Um, and I think if I was being genuine in that time, I'd be like, actually, I'm kind of going through a few things myself, but like, but also, but like, what's going on? Like, if you just need to kind of talk a little bit, but I don't know, that's kind of difficult too.
It's hard, right? And we're not gonna get it right every time, especially if you're in the middle of crisis. You might not know what else to do, and it might take a lot out of you just to reach out at all, and even send something without asking, right? Which is not ideal, but glad that you're reaching out. But that's why it's important that we have these conversations, and also with our friends and the people in our lives. And I think the emotional go bag idea is also important by also asking people like what they can offer and what they have space, in that time to like show up. Like one person might be like, normally I love to support you, but I'm working on a bunch of really big projects this month. So after this month, I got you, but like this month is kind of hard for me. or they might be able to offer more than you think they will, because studies have shown that people are usually more apt to help us than we think they are. And so just
Hmm.
challenging our assumptions about what the people in our lives can do, how they can show up, but also knowing that there are a bunch of resources just in case, for whatever reason you can't reach out, people can't be there, where you can feel supported with 988 and the suicide hotline and things like that.
Yeah, and I would also say that as a person maybe being asked for help, no, yeah, if somebody's asking for help and asking you, I think sometimes too we can overestimate like how much they need. Like sometimes people just need you to be like, "Man, I'm here for you." You know what I mean? Or just like let them talk
Hmm.
it out. Like so, also that like it might not need the most. I have a one of my line sisters just lost her father the other day, and so like I texted her today. I had been on the move, and I finally texted her today, and just you guys are all in my thoughts, blah blah blah. And then I was like asking her, well, what's your cash app? Because all of my line sisters are in North Carolina area. And so being in California, it's like, well, I can't really support stuff for real, like, showing up and doing things like that. She was like, oh, don't feel like you have to send blah, 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 blah. But I was like, but also like, I know I can't really do the most. So if that's how I can help or that's what I can do, then, I'll do help in the way that I can. But what she said to me, I thought was interesting. She was like, oh, just, you reaching out to me, like, it's really thoughtful. And I'm just so glad that, for you to reach out to me. And something else like around that kind of thought. But, it does make me think like, okay, it doesn't have to feel like some overwhelming, like, oh my gosh, what do they need? Although some people are like that, right? Whether it's like every time they hit you, they need some money or need this or need that. And to be
Hmm.
like, all right, this is real extra. But I'm talking about like when people are kind of going through things, a lot of times they don't need that much, but to feel heard or to feel supported in that time. And so, even if you are going through something else, it does, and it can also be a good thing for you to have some kind of like a positive effect on other people.
Yeah, and it doesn't take much sometimes to show up for people. So we're recording this on Mother's
Hmm.
Day, and I didn't even realize like the Mother's Day was coming up. But then I've had people kind of like,
Hmm.
"Hey, what are you
Like,
doing
how are
on
you doing?
Sunday?"
He
Yeah,
was
and
like,
I'm like,
damn, I
"Huh?"
wasn't thinking about it until y'all
Hey,
texted
now I'm
me.
thinking about it. But I woke up to text messages of people just like, "Oh, thinking about you, praying
Hmm.
for you, sending love. Here's the Starbucks card, like,
That's nice
coffee on
though
me
that
today."
people be thoughtful about that.
Man, and so on days that could be, very hard or struggly for folks, or when they are, they're kind of going through stuff, like it doesn't take much sometimes to reach out and just kind of
Mhm.
like love on folks. And maybe even if it's hard for people to ask sometimes, like, asking, is there any way I can support you? Or even offering, like, hey, can I buy you lunch today? I know today's a
Mhm.
tough day. Can I, support you that way? And just seeing, what they're open to. And that might take some of the onus off them to like actually reach out and ask when they might
Mhm.
not know what's going on or how to like feel better.
Mhm. That's true. I mean, there have we done a episode on how to be a good friend? Because like all my friends tell me, like I mean, everybody who knows me, they be like, you're a good friend, but you're not really a good friend for real. I'm like, yeah, I feel you. Like I get it because I'll be having so much stuff. Like I'm not doing a whole lot of extra like checking in. I'm real like out of sight, out of mind kind of. But if somebody needs something, like I'm one of those like somebody got directly kind of let me know what's going on, and then I'm not gonna like leave you hanging. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Have we done an episode like that or about that?
No,
You
but we have
sure?
it on the ideas list. We know, but we have it on the
Mm,
ideas list. So maybe we
yeah,
should do
because
one of
like
those.
because that sounds like so much work. And also I think it's worth maybe in our lives kind of saying like, all right, who are those people that are like on this type of list where I'm like, checking and checking in, who are the people on this type of list where it's like every so often, because there's different levels, right, to our friendships.
Hmm.
But like, I don't, yeah, I think, even like the people I call my closest friends, they'll still be like, you don't really be asking me about this and that. And I'm like, no, I don't really, but I see you every other day. So maybe I'm also taking for granted that I'm like seeing you or hanging out or whatever.
Yeah.
But it is important to like think about that. And everybody has different needs or has different definitions of like what friendship or being there for somebody is. And like I said, for me, it's like, okay, if you need something, then I will be there. But that's different than like just checking up on you any given day.
Man, yeah, we're gonna do that episode. But it makes me think, I tried to do like friend check-ins to make sure everybody feels loved and supported because people do have different needs, right?
Mhm.
And I was laughing because one of my best friends, Kim, I hit her and I was like, hey, just checking in, want to make sure that you feel loved and supported as a friend. Is there anything else I can do to support you? She was like, is it bad that if I say I'm good? We talk like once a month. Like, and
Mhm.
she's
I
like, I
remember
would
you
say
talked about that before.
yeah, she's like one of my greatest friends. She was like, actually, dog, I'm good, bro. Like,
Yeah,
cool.
and that's how I would probably, but it's like you never know, right? You never know, maybe a day where something really is going on, but like but in general it's just like, yeah, I mean, you might know that about certain friends too, like which ones are kind of like, if you see something weird or whatever, then but otherwise it's like, whatever for them.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's about knowing your people. But mostly like, and going back to like the topic of the episode is, really knowing yourself. And like you said, if you really feel like you're in a deep, darker place, um, just at least knowing who you can reach out to and just practicing saying, man, I'm feeling kind of down today. Like it might just be that, like just making the statement of how you feel. And
Hmm.
letting them take it from there and letting them kind of show you if they're, a person who really talk to you or not.
Yeah, because just like we build up our toolkit, it's like you're building up your support team for those type of things, and then you can have those deeper conversations
Hmm.
with them. But I hope that y'all got something out of this and some stuff to apply to your own life, whether it's like asking more or knowing what you need so you do have an ask for people in your life. It can be big or small, even with business.
Hmm.
Because I did a business pitch at that business thing. And I didn't have an ask other than like to give my website and social media, and there was like an accelerator there, and she was like, you should always have an ask, like always have
Hmm.
an ask. And I'm like, man, you right, because I killed everything else but then missed that part. So
Hmm.
challenging y'all to ask for more in your life. Don't be out here acting entitled because yuck, but asking for things in a way that challenges you to also challenge your assumptions and narratives about like rejection and people wanting to show up for you and all those
Hmm.
things. And if you are in crisis, please call 988 or talk to a therapist or go somewhere to where you can feel safe and supported.
Yeah, every time we have a guest on the podcast, we ask them what they need, and to have like a call to action for people who are listening to them or connecting to them. So in the same way, we should all be kind of doing that in our lives too, where you're putting out there what you need. I think what makes that easier, or like for me, for example, it makes it easier to talk about the things you need when you really know you need something, because you know that you do a lot of giving. So like, if you know that in your, maybe in your work or in your content or just like with your friendships or whatever that you give, then you should especially not feel any, kind of way about asking sometimes for what you need, and like making sure that that's evened out. Not because you need it to be even, but like, you don't have to be that nice person who's like, you're always giving and never asking.
Yeah, because that's not. Yeah, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Give people an opportunity to show up for you and also advocate for what you need. Hit us at Carlie's Couch. Let us know, when do you ask for help? If you have any thoughts of,
I
ways
need some
people
help right
can.
now, child. I'm sorry. I'm moving around the most because I'm getting bit up by mosquitoes. I'm like, shoot, I'm itching.
Oh man. Okay. Well, we'll
Oh,
make it
got
quick.
too
We're
much.
gonna
I
end.
don't even got that much skin on right now, but God, dog, get me.
We're gonna end with the question of the week. What
Okay.
is your biggest fashion slash makeup regret, or do you have any?
Regret.
Or like something that makes
Um,
you laugh whenever you look back at it,
I
like in
mean, all of that
pictures.
stuff makes you laugh looking back. I would say regret would be when I used to cut my bangs myself. Because then it was just like real, like straight, and it was like just like one big roll. And I remember going to pick my brothers up from the barber shop one time, and the barber was like, "And I know you cut them bangs yourself." And I was so embarrassed. I was like, "Damn, they do look real immature." I
Oh
used to do it all the
damn.
time, but I've always like tried to do my own stuff. Like, so I remember I used to
Mhm.
cut them, and they would be like way too short, or like when I was just crossing, like they were way long, and they were like all the way down to my eyes. But either way, I'm like, that wasn't really it. So I'm gonna go
Mm,
with that.
that's a good one. And that brought me up when that brought up the thought when I actually tried to get bangs again because I grew up with the little bob with the bangs, and then
Hmm.
I grew them hoes out in fifth grade and never looked back. And then in college, I was like, oh, I'm gonna try bangs. Bad idea. I wore
Hmm.
them out once and then put them up. But I will say, I had an addiction to white eyeliner in seventh grade. I just thought it was the
Oh shit.
coolest thing, bro. I thought I was white eyeshadow or eyeliner, like anything ridiculously cool and bright on
Hmm.
my face. I just knew I was it. And I'd be laughing so hard because my mom told me, and I'd be like, "No, I liked it." Now I'm like, "Ooh, Whew.
looking crazy.
Out here looking wild.
Should have asked for help.
Should have asked for help. Look. Well, thank y'all if y'all are still listening. I'm gonna ask y'all to leave us a review, share this with a friend,
Mhm.
and hit us if you have any ideas, questions, or topics for us.
Yeah, and see you next week.
Bye, y'all.